Kate, the Future Queen, by Katie Nicholl. Chapter 10. A Royal Engagement. As they jetted out of London's Heathrow Airport, bound for Kenya at the start of October 2010, Kate dared to hope that she might return from Africa with a ring on her finger, but as the holiday drew to a close, there was no sign of a proposal. There had been plenty of opportunities, each stage of their African adventure a potential setting for a romantic moment. But now on the last day of their trip, Kate's heart was heavy. They had started with a trek to one of the most remote parts of the country, the rainlands of Ishak Bin, where they camped and cooked over a fire they built from forest wood. It was basic, remote, and most important, just the two of them, but there was no proposal. From Ishak Bin they traveled to Lua, where they stayed at the same five-star lodge they holidayed in after their graduation. There they enjoyed game drives and on one occasion were lucky enough to spot a rare black hook-lipped rhinoceros, which was tranquilized and named in William's honor after he paid $9,000 to sponsor the beast and ensure it was safe in the wild. As the great animal lay breathing in the grass, he and Kate had touched it. But still, there was no proposal, and so by the time they headed to Sarara for another safari with two friends from South Africa, Kate had given up hope. Instead, she threw herself into photographing the giraffe, elephants, wild dogs, buffalo, and vast open plains, which she planned to catalogue when she got home. The final leg of their holiday came as a complete surprise to Kate. William had booked a day and a night at the Illinois Ngwesi Lodge, a remote log cabin in the heart of the countryside near the Great Lake Rutundu. He had stayed there before, so he knew it would be the perfect place to return with someone special. The lodge was basic and far from luxurious, but it was the remote location in the middle of the countryside that made it unique. And it was here that Kate's long-awaited dream came true. On the shores of Lake Rutundu, William got down on bended knee and asked Kate to marry him. Even though she had thought about little else for so long, when the moment came, Kate was speechless. Later, she declared that it was very romantic, and a total surprise. As always where William was concerned, a degree of rationality applied to even this unique moment in his life, and he and Kate agreed to keep the proposal a secret until he asked Kate's father for her hand in marriage. He also wanted them to be able to enjoy the moment together before the news was made public. It was a secret he knew they wouldn't be able to hold on to for too long, knowing that within a matter of seconds of an official announcement, the news would go global. So, when Kate signed the guest book the next morning, she gave nothing away. "Thank you for such a wonderful 24 hours, she wrote. "Sadly, no fish to be found, but we had fun trying. I love the warm fires and candlelights, so romantic. Hope to be back soon." When they returned home to Anglesey, Kate put her engagement ring in the safe. Had it been any other ring, she might have been able to get away with wearing it on another finger, but Princess Diana's diamond and sapphire cluster was immediately recognizable. Although no one, not even his father or brother, knew of his intention to propose to Kate while away, William had spoken with Harry to make sure his younger brother was happy for him to have their mother's ring, as and when the time came. Once they were back in Wales and William had returned to work, he invited Michael and Carol to Birkhall for the weekend. He had personally overseen everything from ensuring that there were freshly picked flowers in the guest bedrooms to organizing the menus. Just before supper on the first night, William took Michael into the drawing room, poured them both a large whiskey, and asked for permission to marry Kate. Without a moment's hesitation, Michael gave William his blessing. Before William could make the announcement, he knew that royal protocol meant that he had to ask for his grandmother's permission to marry Kate. He made Michael swear not to tell a soul about their secret engagement, not even Carol, explaining why it was of paramount importance that the news did not leak out before the official announcement from the palace. Nicholl kept his word, however. The weekend away didn't stay a secret for long. Carol had been photographed hunting in the Highlands, and the pictures, which were published the following week, caused a sensation. The fact that the Middletons were staying in a royal residence was seen as highly significant, prompting fresh speculation in the press that an announcement was just around the corner. The story traveled across the world like wildfire, with magazines in America buzzing with predictions that a wedding really was about to happen. Vanity Fair published an article predicting a wedding in 2011, while another tabloid publication in the States went further, dedicating its cover to the story, "Royal Wedding is on." But despite the fervid speculation, there was no announcement from the palace. When, weeks later, William and Kate were photographed in Gloucestershire at their friend Harry Mead's wedding, there were more rumours. Arriving arm in arm, smiling at the waiting cameras, they went through the front entrance rather than the side door. Later that evening at the reception, talk turned to when William and Kate would be walking down the aisle. "Maybe he'll get round to it someday," Kate told her friends, while William batted off jokes about how long he was taking to pop the question. They knew they could not keep the engagement secret for much longer and agreed to make the announcement officially on Wednesday, November 3rd. The plan was abandoned, however, when Kate's only surviving grandparent, Peter, died suddenly the day before. William attended the funeral at the West Berkshire crematorium before flying to Afghanistan for a Remembrance Sunday service with British troops, where he laid a wreath at Camp Bastion. Kate was deeply saddened not to have had the chance to tell her grandfather that she was engaged to William. She knew he would have been delighted for her. On his return from Afghanistan on Monday, William and Kate agreed that they would make the announcement the following morning. The legally binding Royal Marriages Act 1772 obliged William to ask for his grandmother's consent. Providing she granted it, the Queen was then required to sign a notice of approval under the Great Seal of the realm. Ironically, it had been made law by George III after his younger brother, the Duke of Cumberland, had secretly married the widow of a commoner. Now William and Kate, the first true commoner to marry into the royal family for several centuries, were about to write royal history. It was Tuesday, November 16, 2010, and the Queen, who had been reading briefing notes on her official duties for the morning over her breakfast of cornflakes, was thrilled to receive William's call, albeit a little surprised at the suddenness of the announcement. The Queen had no idea that there would be an announcement that morning, said a source. She was eating breakfast with Philip when William called to tell her the news. It was rather hurried because William was apparently worried about it leaking out. William enjoyed outfoxing the media, and this was one announcement he wanted to make himself. The last thing he wanted was a newspaper getting the scoop, as had happened with his father's engagement to Camilla. When William called from his private living quarters at Clarence House with Kate by his side, Charles was with Camilla at Highgrove, preparing to travel to Devon that morning. They were both overjoyed. Harry, who was at his army base in Hampshire, turned the air blue with a string of expletives when the couple called to tell him the happy news. "It took you long enough," he joked. Kate then called her parents in Bucklebury. Of course, her father knew, and Kate wasn't sure whether he had told her mother. Either way, it didn't matter. Kate told them to brace themselves for the announcement. It was just after 9 a.m. when the couple walked across the cobbled courtyard to meet with William's private secretary, Jamie Lowe the Pinkerton. The former Special Air Service officer, known for his meticulous planning, congratulated the couple and told them the palace press office would be ready to make the announcement by 11 a.m. The couple then went to see William's chief press officer, Miguel Head, and his team. "We were ecstatic when they came in to tell us," recalled an aide. "We genuinely had no idea they were secretly engaged, and they looked so happy when they told us. There was a palpable sense of relief. Then the hard work started, and there was an awful lot to organize in a very short time. 2 hours later, we made the announcement. In keeping with their modern courtship, the news was posted on the royal family's recently launched Facebook page, while Clarence House also tweeted the news, which was retweeted thousands of times and went viral within seconds. A press statement was issued to the world's media via email. The Prince of Wales is delighted to announce the engagement of Prince William to Miss Catherine Middleton. The wedding will take place in the spring or summer of 2011 in London. It was the job of the Queen's private office, together with the British government, to decide on the date. Which was no small task. Heads of state and diplomats around the world, along with foreign royals, would all need to be consulted. Although William had secretly hoped for a family wedding at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, like his cousin Peter Phillips, he knew that his wedding day would be akin to a semi-state occasion. The only real options were St. Paul's Cathedral, where his mother and father had married, or Westminster Abbey, where the Queen had married Prince Philip, and her father, King George VI, had married Elizabeth Beauce-Lyon. Within minutes of the announcement, hundreds of journalists and reporters had gathered at Buckingham Palace. By lunchtime, TV crews from across the world were assembled at Canada Gate on the Mall reporting on the biggest royal story since the death of Princess Diana. The Queen was the first to comment publicly. "It is brilliant news," she told TV journalists at Windsor Castle. "It has taken them a very long time." Charles joked to reporters, "They've been practicing long enough." Camilla declared the news wicked, while Harry couldn't stop smiling. "It means I get a sister, which I have always wanted," he said. Prime Minister David Cameron added his personal congratulations, and Kate's parents held an impromptu press conference at the family home, where reporters and camera crews had gathered at the end of their driveway. They had spent the morning working on a brief statement at the kitchen table, assisted by members of William's press team, who had made themselves available by phone. Now that the engagement was to be made official, the Middleton family, at William's request, would be supported for the immediate future by the palace's impressive PR machine. Apart from his quip to one reporter nearly 8 years ago on the weekend of Kate's 21st birthday party, Michael had never spoken to the media. If he was nervous, he didn't show it, facing the cameras with composure. "Carol and I are absolutely delighted by today's announcement and thrilled at the prospect of a wedding sometime next year," he said. "As you know, Catherine and Prince William have been going out together for quite a number of years, which has been great for us because we have got to know William very well. We all think he is wonderful and we are extremely fond of him. They make a lovely couple, they're great fun to be with, and we've had a lot of laughs together. We wish them every happiness for the future." Carol, dressed in a fleece top and designer jeans, smiled but said nothing. She had telephoned James and Pippa that morning to warn them that they would probably be contacted by the press, and to not say a word. Although the family had never had any instruction from the palace about how to deal with the media, Kate had always advised them not to say anything to reporters. The wall of silence she had insisted on ever since she and William started dating was more important now than ever before. As soon as the announcement was made, Scotland Yard's elite royal protection, known as SO14, had contacted the commander of the Royalty and Diplomatic Protection Department at Buckingham Palace and asked for a team of 3 officers to be made immediately available to Kate. The officer in charge would be Inspector Karen Llewellyn, previously responsible for protecting Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, whose royal protection had been scaled down as a cost-cutting measure. The other 2 were Sergeant Emma Probert, who, like Carol, had worked as a flight attendant before a change of career, and one of Prince Harry's close protection officers, Detective Sergeant Yehan Jones. Kate had met with the officers that morning and from that moment on was accompanied everywhere by the team. There was also a permanent police presence at Oak Acre, where uniformed officers brandishing semi-automatic machine guns patrolled the grounds. It was, Carol later admitted to a friend, one of the hardest adjustments to this new life, not just for Kate, but also for the family. Their friends in the village also had to get used to police convoys and SUVs with black windows driving through Chapel Row, as well as an unprecedented number of reporters who knocked on doors of neighbors and friends and visited the local shops in search of information about the family. Soon, there were guided bus tours taking over the narrow country lanes, with guides pointing out the couple's favorite pub, Kate's first school, and the family's former home in Bradfield. It was William's parents who had set the precedent for celebrating royal engagements by granting a TV interview, and William and Kate knew that it would be expected of them. The press aides at the palace had been liaising with ITN News all morning. William wanted them to speak to the news network's political editor, Tom Bradby, who had interviewed him before. He was one of the few journalists William trusted, and by coincidence, Kate knew Mr. Bradby's wife, Claudia, a jewelry designer with whom she had worked at Jigsaw. Mr. Bradby was summoned to the palace while he was walking to Westminster that morning. The phone rang and it was Clarence House on the line, he told the Daily Mail. "They're engaged," said a voice. "It's out there. You're on." He was told that the interview was set for 7 p.m. that evening and that there was no time to waste. While TV cameras were set up at St. James's Palace, Kate and William chatted with Mr. Bradby. They seemed in high spirits, happy and relaxed. "Are you okay?" William asked Kate once or twice. "I'm fine," she told him. "I'll be looking after you." Kate chose a royal blue silk jersey dress by one of her favorite designers, Brazilian-born Daniela Helea, and the color perfectly complemented her ring. Meanwhile, her trusted hairdresser, James Price, was called to the palace to blow-dry her hair. "I was doing a client when I got a call from the palace asking me to come and do Kate's hair. They told me that they had announced their engagement. It was hugely exciting and the most important blow-dry I'd ever done. Kate just asked me for the usual." Kate had been dreading the interview, and afterward Mr. Bradby remembered her leaning back and sighing with relief, exclaiming, "I'm no good at this." While the film was taken to an editing room, there was another nerve-wracking appointment still to go, the official photo session, which meant coming face-to-face with Fleet Street's royal press pack. William led Kate into the stateroom with some trepidation, but it wasn't the lion's den she had feared. Kate introduced herself as Catherine and happily displayed her ring. "I'm sure you all recognize it," said William. Some of the journalists had covered Charles and Diana's engagement announcement nearly 30 years earlier, and the ring brought back memories of a young lady, Diana Spencer. Back then, in Charles and Diana's interview, when a reporter asked Prince Charles if he was in love, he famously responded, "Whatever love means." With his arm protectively around Kate, it was clear William knew exactly what love meant. Like the late Princess of Wales, Kate was statuesque and beautiful, with heavily made-up eyes, but she seemed far more confident than Diana, who had been just 19 when she and Charles got engaged. Although she admitted to being anxious, Kate managed to keep her nerves in check, and as she walked into the photo session, one step behind her fiancé, she appeared poised, almost regal, smiling despite the startling camera flashes. The 15-minute interview was watched by a record 3 billion people across the world that evening. Incredibly, it was the very first time Kate had spoken publicly. She made a point of placing her hands on her lap so that she didn't fidget with her hair and spoke beautifully in a cut-glass accent. Some of her school friends noticed that her clipped tones were rather different from how she spoke when she was a young girl. She has changed a lot. She's certainly grown into a beauty, and the funny thing is her voice has completely changed. She sounds very posh, and she definitely wasn't that well-spoken when we were at school," recalled one of her contemporaries from St. Andrew's Prep. "The first topic of discussion was the proposal. It was very romantic," said Kate. "There's a true romantic in there." She admitted to being genuinely stunned when William asked her to marry him. "I thought he might have thought about it, but no, it was a total shock when it came and very exciting." William revealed that they had been talking about marriage for some time. "We've talked about today for a while, for at least a year, if not longer. It was just finding the right time. I had my military career and I really wanted to concentrate on my flying, and I couldn't have done this if I was still doing my training, so I've got that out of the way, and Kate's in a good place in terms of work and where she wants to be, and we both just decided now was a really good time." He also spoke movingly about why he had chosen his mother's ring. "It's very special to me. As Kate's very special to me now, it was right to put the two together," he explained. "It was my way of making sure my mother didn't miss out on today and the excitement and the fact that we are going to spend the rest of our lives together." They agreed that it was a real relief to finally be engaged, although Kate said it had not been an easy secret to keep. "We had quite an awkward situation because I knew that William had asked my father, but I didn't know if my mother knew. So I came back from Scotland, and my mother didn't make it clear to me whether she knew or not. So both of us were there sort of looking at each other." William was remarkably candid about why he had waited 8 years to propose. "I wanted to give her the chance to see in and back out if she needed to before it all got too much," he said. "I'm trying to learn from lessons done in the past, and I just wanted to give her the chance to settle in and see what happens on the other side." They talked about their breakup in 2007, and Kate confessed it had been an unhappy time but insisted that she had come through it a stronger person. "You find out things about yourself that maybe you hadn't realized," she said. She also spoke of her gratitude to William's father, who she said had welcomed her into the family early on. She described Charles as very, very welcoming, very friendly. When Mr. Bradby asked Kate how it felt to be marrying into the most famous family in the world and her feelings about the late Princess of Wales, Kate stumbled for the first time. "Obviously, I would love to have met her," she said softly. William stepped in. "There's no pressure," he insisted. "No one is trying to fill my mother's shoes. What she did was fantastic. It's about making your own future and your own destiny, and Kate will do a very good job of that." They spoke about the importance of family and how they hope to start their own in the future. "It's very important to me, and I hope we will be able to have a happy family ourselves," Kate said. "We'll have to start thinking about that," William added. With the nation glued to their televisions that evening, Kate paid a quiet visit to Westminster Abbey with Helen Asprey, William's trusted diary aide, who had been designated as one of the wedding planners. As Kate walked up the aisle, her footsteps echoing around the empty pews, she marveled at the scale and beauty of the Abbey and the enormity of what lay ahead. By the end of the month, the palace announced that the wedding day, which was also to be a national holiday, would take place at Westminster Abbey on Friday, April 29, 2011. It was where William's mother's life had been celebrated at both her funeral and memorial service, and he thought it a fitting tribute to her. Both he and Kate loved the sacrarium, a raised platform at the Abbey's high altar, which afforded them an intimate place to exchange their vows. In keeping with tradition, Dr. Rowan Williams, the Archbishop of Canterbury, was to marry them into the Church of England, of which William would one day be the head. Charles arranged for his good friend, the Bishop of London, Richard Chartres, to give the address. The Dean of Westminster, Dr. John Hall, was asked to conduct the service. The twin choirs of Westminster Abbey and Her Majesty's Chapel Royal, together with the London Chamber Orchestra, the trumpeters of the Household Cavalry, and the RAF fanfare team were appointed to fill the Abbey with music. While William returned to work, Kate decided to put her photography exhibition on hold so that she could fully focus on planning her wedding. Unlike other brides, Kate not only had a wedding to organize, she was also being intensively prepped on everything, from how to handle the media to constitutional matters. Sir David Manning, one of the Queen's most senior aides, had been tasked with ensuring she was properly briefed on state and foreign affairs, ceremonial matters, and crucially, the order of hierarchy when she was in the company of senior royals. A former British ambassador to the United States, Sir David taught Kate the protocol on receiving heads of state and foreign crowned heads, before whom she was expected to curtsy. When she attended the Queen's Christmas drinks party at Buckingham Palace that month for the very first time, Kate got the opportunity to put her training to use. She curtsied to Prince Charles and Camilla in the presence of the Queen, and she was also required to curtsy, or bob, to blood royals, including the Duke of York's daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. It might have felt slightly strange, because the young women occasionally socialized together, but it was the order of precedence. Kate was happy to be spending her last Christmas as a single woman with her family. She knew once she was married, she would be expected at Sandringham every year. William was on duty at RAF Valley on Christmas Day, and as usual, they were both together in Scotland for the New Year. Kate's 29th birthday was a typically low-key celebration, and instead of having a party, she and William spent her birthday weekend in North Yorkshire at the wedding of their friends Harry Aubrey-Fletcher and Louise Stourton. Not wanting to upstage the bride, Kate arrived separately from William through a side entrance with her protection officer in tow. She still found being shadowed a strange experience, and although she got along well with her protection officers, it felt unnatural having to tell someone where she was going and what she was doing every minute of the day. Possibly the strangest thing was having an armed guard with her when she went home to Bucklebury. Kate divided her time between Anglesey and London, where she had regular meetings at Clarence House. She had taken the advice of some of her girlfriends who had found mood boards useful in the run-up to their own weddings. Kate set about archiving cuttings from books and magazines, and took the mood boards into the planning meetings. She wanted nature to feature strongly, and when she had the idea to bring maple trees into the Abbey, Charles, who was picking up part of the bill together with the Queen and the Middletons, referred her to his florist, Shane Connolly. According to one senior aide, William and Kate were told that anything they wanted was possible, and Charles and the Queen made their full households available to them both. There was speculation in the press from the engagement day onward about everything to do with the wedding, from who was designing Kate's dress, a secret she was determined to keep until the wedding day, to how she would wear her hair. According to James Price, she decided on a demi-chignon in February and had considered flowers in her hair. One of the ideas was to have lily of Valley because it is beautiful, British, and seasonal, but then she decided she wanted to wear a tiara. She was very firm about what she wanted, and romantic was the key word. The Queen had suggested the couple carry out a brief tour of Great Britain ahead of the wedding, and courtiers set to work preparing an itinerary to include Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and the north of England. Their first walkabout took place in Anglesey, and on a windy February morning, they launched a new lifeboat at Tredegar Bay, not far from RAF Valley. The next day, they flew to St Andrews University, as William had been asked to be the patron of the 600th anniversary appeal. Hundreds of well-wishers lined up to meet the couple, and as they talked to students, they recalled their own happy days in their university town. "It feels like coming home," said William, while Kate appeared to momentarily forget her etiquette and greeted the crowds with an endearing hi. After visiting the university, they made a fleeting trip to Fife. "I have to try and keep up with him," Kate joked as she shook hands with some of the crowd. Dressed in an eye-catching scarlet dress and jacket, her outfit by Italian designer Luisa Spagnoli was such a hit that it sold out online within hours, leading fashion writers to predict that Kate was set to be just as great a style icon as Diana. As referred to in the newspapers, was evident once again after the Burberry trench coat she wore sold out within hours. Kate seemed overwhelmed with the reception she received, and as she gamely flipped a pancake to mark Shrove Tuesday, she felt moved to show her gratitude and address those who had waited to see them. "Thank you for giving me such a warm welcome." The crowds were just as warm in Lancashire, where not even torrential rain could dampen the spirits of the people who queued for hours for a glimpse of the couple. As hundreds of local people gathered behind the police barriers, cameras poised, waving Union Jacks, there was much talk of how slim Kate was in the flesh. It was reported in the press that she had dropped a dress size and had to have her engagement ring tightened. "Are you nervous?" one well-wisher asked as Kate accepted a bouquet of rain-drenched flowers. "Of course I am," she responded. The palace considered the tour so successful that it was decided William and Kate should visit Canada and the United States after their wedding. This young and glamorous couple appeared to be breathing new life into the monarchy, and a national poll conducted then by the Sunday Times found that the majority of the public thought William would make a better king than Charles. Many said the heir should step aside so that William could take the throne upon the Queen's death. Kate was having weekly update meetings at Clarence House, and by the end of March, most of the key decisions about the ceremony and the wedding reception had been made. Mr. Lowther Pinkerton was in charge of the plans, but the couple made the final decision on everything. Kate had asked Charles to help her choose the music for the ceremony, and the pair spent hours listening to songs and hymns on Charles's iPod. Camilla treated Kate and Pippa to lunch so that they could discuss the forthcoming nuptials. A senior aide said that the Duchess was eager to be a part of the preparations. "Camilla is very fond of Kate, and she wanted the chance to hear all about the plans and offered to help if she could in any way." It was a case of the family helping Kate as much as they could. After much deliberation about the guest list, by March, the gilt-edged invitations, which were addressed from the Queen, were sent out. The Controller of the Lord Chamberlain's office, Sir Andrew Ford, together with the Queen's private secretary, Sir Christopher Gate, had drawn up a guest list, but William had balked when he saw it. "There was very much a subdued moment when I was handed a list with 777 names on. Not one person I knew or Catherine knew," William told the British broadcaster Alan Titchmarsh. "I went to her, the Queen, and said, 'Listen, I've got this list, not one person I know, what do I do?' And she went, 'Get rid of it. Start from your friends, and then we'll add those we need to in due course. It's your day.'" Unlike Charles's wedding to Lady Diana Spencer, which was a state occasion, William as heir apparent was not obliged to invite the same number of dignitaries because he was not next in line to the throne. However, the heads of the Commonwealth and certain crowned heads had to be invited as a matter of protocol. Traditionally, recent royal weddings have followed a format. The ceremony is followed by a wedding breakfast before the newlyweds leave for a honeymoon at Balmoral, but William and Kate intended to do things differently. They wanted a dinner and party for their closest friends and family on the night of the wedding, so it was decided that canapés would be served at a champagne reception at the palace for 600 guests. The Queen agreed to give them Buckingham Palace for their wedding night so that the newlyweds could host a wedding party. The Queen would have wanted to accommodate their wishes as much as possible, said Lady Elizabeth Anson. They had been to lots of their friends' weddings, and they had a clear idea of what they wanted, and the Queen understood that. It wasn't the only break with tradition. William and Kate wanted a historic but modest wedding. Kate wanted to arrive at Westminster Abbey by car rather than in the state coach, and at the couple's request, and in keeping with their wishes to be relatively frugal, it was decided that extended members of the royal family and visiting royals were to be ferried from Buckingham Palace to the Abbey in minibuses. They also wanted it to be a wedding for the people, so 50 of the couple's guests were drawn by lots from the charities they supported and invited to the ceremony in the Abbey. They decided not to have a traditional wedding gift list and instead asked for donations to 26 charities that they handpicked, among them an anti-bullying organization, Beat Bullying, that Kate personally wanted to support. It was a cause close to her heart ever since her painful experiences as a teenager at Down House. The charitable fund was hugely popular, and members of the public helped to raise over $1 million for the couple's chosen causes. William and Kate had asked Pippa to be the maid of honor and Harry to be best man, and the two of them were in charge of planning the evening party. Meanwhile, Kate was busy meeting with florists, cake makers, and the clergy. As part of her marriage preparations, she was confirmed into the Church of England. Although she had been baptized at birth, the Middletons were not regular churchgoers and Kate had never been confirmed. William and Kate, as future King and Queen of Great Britain, would be the heads of the Church of England one day, so they were expected to attend church every Sunday. Religion is embedded in the royal family, members of which until recently were not allowed to marry Catholics in order to preserve the Church of England faith, which was established in the 16th century by King Henry VIII. Kate was baptized at St. James's Palace in a private ceremony in March, to which only her family and William were invited. There were top-secret dress fittings and clandestine trips to Hampton Court Palace, where the lace for her bridal gown was being hand-stitched by a team of seamstresses. The palace had hired Anthony Gordon Lennox, a voice coach who was helping to prepare Kate for the wedding day. He used breathing techniques to help her relax and taught her how to project her voice so that it would fill the abbey. One of the exercises she was required to do was record herself on video camera and watch the footage to see how she came across. Wedding fever had not only gripped the nation, but the world. An advertisement for one mobile phone company featured a spoof of the wedding day, complete with royal look-alikes, which became a YouTube sensation. William and Kate apparently downloaded it, finding it hilarious, according to their friends. Meanwhile, in America, countless documentaries were made about Kate's rags-to-riches life, and her romance with William was deemed such a fairy tale that a feature-length movie was made about their university romance. The royal palaces in England and Scotland reported a record number of visitors. Westminster Abbey was busier than ever, with queues to get in, and thousands of street parties were being planned around the country for the wedding day itself. Official merchandise such as tea towels and commemorative bone china was hugely popular, festive bunting sold out, and Michael and Carol's website party pieces enjoyed weeks of bumper sales. The site had launched a British street party range of goods, which was selling well. It seemed everyone wanted to cash in on the wedding or anything to do with Kate. The see-through skirt that she wore in the St. Andrew's fashion show where she famously caught William's eye was sold at auction for $118,000. The designer had vowed never to sell a part of fashion history, but when a mystery bidder offered to pay in cash, she capitulated. The official royal wedding website received thousands of hits every day. The engagement pictures, which had been shot by Diana's favorite photographer, Mario Testino, had been posted on the site, along with pictures from the Middleton family album of a 3-year-old Kate rock climbing in the Lake District and visiting Petra in Jordan. The fact that Kate had spent her early childhood in the Middle East had only just become public knowledge. Behind the scenes, Michael and Carol were in constant contact with the palace. Historically, in-laws have always been kept at an arm's length, but in this case the Middletons were being allowed to contribute to the wedding, together with the Queen and Prince Charles. William had promised Michael and Carol they would always be included in their lives, and his in-laws wanted to make a financial contribution. It was quite unprecedented. When Lady Diana Spencer and Sarah Ferguson married into the royal family, their families complained bitterly at being left out in the cold once their daughters married into royalty. Carol and Michael were kept abreast of developments as the wedding took shape through a hotline to the St. James's Palace press office. Courtiers appreciated that, not coming from nobility, the Middletons might need some help navigating through all the rigmarole and protocol of a royal wedding. They were an ordinary family thrust into a most extraordinary situation, and there were a number of adjustments to be made to their lives within a relatively short space of time. The Middletons had already faced accusations in the press that their business was shamelessly cashing in on the royal wedding by stocking themed memorabilia. Carol called Mr. Lowther Pinkerton for advice. When Britannia-themed scratch cards complete with crowns, which were deemed rather tacky and in poor taste by some sections of the media, went on sale on the site, aides suggested withdrawing the products, which were then discontinued online. Michael and Carol found themselves in a difficult position. They had a business to run and a team of staff to employ, and everyone else was making a pretty penny out of the royal wedding. Nonetheless, they had to be careful not to be seen as exploiting their daughter's position. There were practical elements to consider as well. Since the engagement, there had been a permanent media presence outside the family home, and there was global interest in the other Middleton siblings. Although Kate benefited from round-the-clock royal protection, her family did not, and Michael and Carol discussed security matters with William's aides at the palace, who suggested a London-based private security firm, Salamanca, run by Hayrick Bondgunning, a former captain of the Grenadier Guards. The firm specializes in personal protection for the rich and famous and charges a daily rate of over $1,500. Michael and Carol considered it a wise investment. Although the Chelsea apartment that Pippa lived in was fitted out with a state-of-the-art security system from when Kate lived there, Pippa was still relatively exposed in London and was now regularly followed by the paparazzi. There were genuine fears that she might be the subject of a kidnapping plot, and Michael and Carol looked into upgrading her BMW sports car to a bomb-proof Audi like her sister's. The invitations and the order of service for the ceremony were being taken care of by Buckingham Palace, but Michael and Carol had been invited to draw up their own guest list, and the North Lantern in the Abbey had been reserved for their family and friends. They were in constant communication with Mr. Lowther Pinkerton and Helen Asprey, who explained that only the immediate family would be invited to the lunchtime reception at Buckingham Palace. It was a delicate matter. Carol and Michael had friends from all corners of the world coming to the wedding. Some were family, others were old friends who had moved as far away as Australia. A handful of people were also coming over from Mustique. Michael and Carol decided to invite guests to a hotel in central London, so courtiers assisted them in booking the Goring Hotel, a stone's throw from Buckingham Palace. The establishment is popular with the royal family and was one of the Queen Mother's favourite places in London. Carol started planning a pre-wedding supper and post-wedding barbecue in the hotel's gardens, and Mr. Lowther Pinkerton advised them that they would also need a coat of arms, a prerequisite for any royal bride. As they did not come from aristocratic lineage, the Middletons didn't have a family crest. Lady Diana Spencer, Sarah Ferguson, and Sophie Rhys-Jones all had family insignias when they married into the family, but the Middletons would need to register a petition for their own crest. Any individual in the United Kingdom can apply for such an insignia, but the College of Arms decides whether to accept the petition. Michael liaised closely with Garter Principal King of Arms and Senior Herald Thomas Woodcock from the College of Arms, and with Kate's input, they agreed to incorporate acorn sprigs within the design. Kate loved the notion that from tiny acorns great oaks grow, and the part of Berkshire where they lived was famous for its oak trees. The design, in blue, white, and red, to reflect the colors of the Union Jack, comprised 3 acorns, one to represent each of the Middleton children, and at the center was a gold chevron that represented Carol, the matriarch of the family, and acknowledged her maiden name, Goldsmith. There was a line down the middle of the crest, a play on the Middleton family name, and white chevrons to represent their love of mountains, skiing, and the great outdoors. The crest cost nearly $7,000, and according to Thomas Woodcock, the family was pleased with the final design, which they were all allowed to use from then on. They had a very strong idea of what they wanted, particularly the acorns, which were Catherine's idea. Carol and Kate were in daily contact, and when they were seen visiting fashion designer Bruce Oldfield's Knightsbridge store in Beauchamp Place, it was reported that the famous couturier, a favorite of the late Princess of Wales, had landed the coveted commission. Designers Daniela Helael, who created Kate's engagement dress, Jenny Packham, Amanda Wakeley, Sarah Burton, and Alice Temperley were also rumored to be in the running for the commission of the century, but Kate was determined that her wedding dress should remain a secret until the moment she walked into the Abbey. She wanted it to be a surprise for William, and the only people who knew the identity of the designer were her mother and her sister. According to Kate's hairdresser, James Price, Kate described the dress from the waist up and said that it had a V neckline with lace sleeves, but that was really all we knew. With all the planning, shopping, and liaising, William and Kate rarely had a quiet moment together, and they were grateful for the peace and solitude they enjoyed in Anglesey. Just weeks before the wedding, the Queen asked William if he would travel to Christchurch in New Zealand, which had been badly hit by an earthquake that had claimed many lives. He was back in time for his stag weekend, which had been planned by Harry and William's closest friend, Thomas Van Straubenzee. The weekend before the wedding, spent somewhat ironically at a 12th-century former monastery in North Devon, was one long party. Harry had arranged a competitive program of water sports, pub crawls, and drinking games, and the group, which included Guy Pelly, Tom Inskip, and Hugh and Ed Van Cutsum, emerged from the weekend the worse for wear after drinking bottles of vintage port supplied from Charles' cellar. Kate was too busy planning the wedding to organize a hen night, so Pippa threw a small party for her closest girlfriends. As April drew to a close, the pressure of planning a royal wedding had begun to show on Kate, whose clothes seemed to hang off her. Carol, who was on a strict protein-only diet in order to shed a few pounds ahead of the big day, made a point of reminding Kate to eat, calling her every evening to check whether she had had supper. Her dress designer was summoned to Clarence House to make the necessary adjustments, and in addition to the final dress fitting, there was one last run-through with her hairdresser. There was a rehearsal of the actual ceremony at the Abbey the day before the wedding as well as a dawn run-through of the wedding day procession. William's regiment, the household cavalry, responsible for ceremonial occasions, had been preparing for weeks, making sure every uniform was spotless, buttons and boots were polished, and the manes of their horses, 2 of whom had been named William and Catherine, were brushed to perfection. While most of London was still sleeping, there was a practice of the processional route from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace. The Queen's carriages were driven through a ghostly central London, horses trotted along Westminster's Whitehall in the chilly morning, and soldiers performed their drills in front of their commanding officers. The countdown had begun, with time-honoured British precision.